One big-time skill player returned to practice, and the running backs are in really good hands for Tennessee football. The final practice observation of spring before the orange and white game. We'll tell you everything that I saw on a Wednesday practice right here on a Thursday. Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into it, your Thursday morning Locked On Vols. I'm Eric Cain. Happy to have you guys along for the ride. Appreciate you for being here, making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single morning. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every single day, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And today's episode is brought to you in part by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's over at FanDuel Sportsbook. All right, so we've reached the end of spring practice. Sure, there's a practice on Friday that's closed to the media, and then, of course, the annual playing of the orange and white game, and we'll kind of list some things that we're looking for in the orange and white game on tomorrow's show, getting you set for that. But the last viewing period of practice for the spring session was held Wednesday morning, and I'm going to bring you some of those observations. One big takeaway I have is the running backs are going to be just fine for Tennessee. That's coming up in a matter of seconds. Nico is vastly underrated. Like, it's almost comical at this point. Sure, he had some faults from last year. I recognize that. But we're seeing more and more of these offseason lists, and we've reset this topic several times, and we'll continue to reset this topic several times. But a couple of different lists coming out this week, and Nico's nowhere on it, and it's hilarious to me. So that coming up in segment 2, and then Grant Ramey, my colleague over at Volquest.com, going to join us to talk basketball portal in segment number 3. Okay, so Tennessee was back on the practice field on a Wednesday morning, and first and foremost, the big returner, I guess, to the practice field was Braylon Staley, and that's important because, you know, he did scrimmage number 1, and then he missed a whole lot of practice last week, and he didn't scrimmage on Monday night for the second scrimmage. But he was back on the practice field, and he looked like, and sure, he might have been limited. We weren't there for the entire session, okay, but he didn't look like he was being held back at all. Will he play in the orange and white game? We'll see. Again, the orange and white game, it doesn't matter. This is spring practice, but you know, Tennessee's already down, numbers-wise at least, you know, at the wide receiver position, and you certainly need some of your better players out there, and Braylon Staley is going to be your starting slot, and I think he's going to perform very, very well. So it was good to see him come back to practice and, you know, kind of get back engaged and all that and more. So that was a big takeaway from the top from maybe an injury perspective. Secondly, I think the running backs are going to be just fine, and sure, it's recency bias. The running backs, you know, spoke to the media. A couple of them, DeSean Bishop and Star Thomas, spoke to the media after practice on Wednesday. And DeSean Bishop, man, his story is incredible. And, you know, we've told it several different times. We'll continue to look back on it. And the more that he continues to lead this running back room and play and perform at a high level on the field, the better. I mean, it's already great, but the more popular his story gets, if you will. If you're new to the show or you don't know the backstory of DeSean Bishop, he was a standout running back, one of the best the state of Tennessee has ever seen. His junior year was phenomenal. His senior year was phenomenal at Carnes High School here in Knoxville, Tennessee. So everybody here in East Tennessee, and specifically the Knoxville area, very much knew who DeSean Bishop was. You know, he got some interest from Georgia Tech a little bit. Pitt comes to mind. Tennessee was, you know, obviously a local kid. They were keeping tabs on him. Committed to Coastal Carolina and was going to go to Coastal Carolina. Ultimately, that coaching staff left, moved to Liberty, and DeSean Bishop opened things back up. And he ultimately decided that he was going to go to Tennessee, but he walked on. He walked on. He bet on himself. And DeSean Bishop just continues to prove himself right. Came here, bet on himself as a walk-on, got hurt in the second scrimmage of fall camp as a freshman, missed a whole lot of time. He missed his entire freshman year, but he said he took a step away from football to kind of figure out who he was outside of the game, and now he just appreciates the game and values the game and knows that he's blessed to be a part of the game even more because of that injury. And, you know, coming back last spring, he had a good spring. Fall camp, he had a good fall camp. He entered the season as the number 2 option behind Dylan Sampson, performed very well, dealt with injuries again this past fall, but again was, you know, the second leading rusher, his yards per carry over 6. Like, he was performing very well. And now this spring, it is him and Peyton Lewis, right? That's 1A and 1B. It's how it's been described to many of us, and that's exactly what we presumed it was going to be, and that's exactly when those guys are healthy. That's what it's going to be in the fall. I mean, both those guys are going to play an awful lot. We'll see who emerges as the number 3 running back. Star Thomas, the security blanket, still learning the terminology, the language. Jarrell Sims kind of talked about this on Wednesday. It's, I've coached here, I coach here, I coach here. Last year, I kind of had to hone in on what we do things here at Tennessee. It's all the same stuff for the most part of it. It's the language, it's the terminology, and that's kind of where Star Thomas is right now. But a guy that's produced every step of the way. He's a veteran. Probably going to be the number 3 tailback in my opinion. Juwan Morris, is coming on as a freshman. He's looked good in spring, but it's going to be a backfield led by 1A DeSean Bishop and 1B Peyton Lewis. And those guys have been really, really good, and they continue to push one another. And just seeing out there at practice on Wednesday morning, man, DeSean, and I've noticed this already this spring, but leading the drills, coaching up his fellow guys, bringing the intensity, bringing the energy. They were doing pass pro drills, and DeSean about knocked over the GA holding the dummy whenever he was coming set and punching, man. Like, he looks good. His body looks good. He's obviously, the strength and conditioning program here at Tennessee over the last couple of years has paid big-time dividends for him. And his story just continues to get that much better. And he talked about playing with a chip on his shoulder. He talked about how there was a guest speaker that came and talked to them at one of the practices, and I'm not sure if it was this spring, last fall, I don't know when it was, but the guest speaker essentially said, hey, you get paid to practice. Games are free. So if you, with that mindset, it's a metaphor, right? You come in, you work every single day, and kind of going and talking about DeSean Bishop earlier this week when I talked about practice into the games. Like, you bust your tail in practice, and then the games where you go and show out. Like, back when I'm really on this podcast too, but back when I was in radio, I always treated the shows, and this show right here is, I'm just verbalizing all the work I've already done, right? I mean, the research, the stories, the interviews, I've done that. Like, it's at Volquest.com. It's written work, all that and more. I am verbalizing the work I've already done. So I'm putting in the work. I'm getting paid to practice, and then this show, it's free, like, essentially, because I'm just going back and I'm already telling you everything that I already know or whatever, my opinions that I've already, rehearsed or written down. So I just think DeSean Bishop is phenomenal story, and I think he's going to continue to be just a great example for Tennessee, and hopefully he can stay healthy. So that was one of my big takeaways from Wednesday, and watching the running backs at practice and all that. I think Peyton Lewis had a pretty good scrimmage on Monday, and so I think DeSean Bishop is even more motivated, even more, not more engaged because he's always been engaged, but I think both those guys are playing at a pretty high level right now, ending spring practice, and so that is really, really, really what you want to see. Interesting note about the defensive backs, they were working on rub routes, defending rub routes. A rub route is essentially, it's the old offensive pass interference that they hardly call, right? It's the pick and roll, essentially, where one wide receiver is running a route, but he's really setting a pick for someone to come underneath or whatever. And the defensive backs were walking through that, getting some practical reps, going and defending that in man coverage. And so I thought that was, they spent a whole period on that on Wednesday morning. So I thought that was pretty noteworthy because that's so relevant in college football today. I thought routes on air was really sluggish to begin. They did routes on air in the end zone. I thought the wide receivers and tight ends, more so than the quarterbacks, looked kind of off. But as that period progressed, I thought it got a whole lot better. And I thought Nico threw the ball very well. I thought Mike Matthews just continues to look great. Braylon Staley, again, if he had limitations, I didn't see any when we were out there. He looked pretty good. One of the freshmen, Rodarius Jackson, just getting some one-on-one coaching from Kelsey Pope, but I think he's continued to have a really, really good spring camp. Defensively, leverage tackling, a lot of that work for the linebackers under the chute, trying to stay low, all that, bag drills pretty much every day for the defensive line while we're out there. Overall, that was some of my big takeaways. The final practice of spring that was open for the media. Again, they'll practice on Friday, probably be more of a walkthrough, and then they'll conclude the 2025 spring practice with the annual Orange and White game coming up on Saturday from Neyland Stadium. So really, really looking forward to that. Okay, so when we come back, man, it's straight comical in my opinion. It is hilarious how Nico continues to be doubted. He continues to be underrated. And downright, it's not fair, to be honest with you. We'll discuss that. I'll show my work when we return right here on Locked On Vols. Stay tuned. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on all the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you're going to get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props. Player props are a whole lot of fun. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet on your favorite player props. Plus, after the games tip off, you can even combine live prop bets into the same game parlay for a chance to win even more. That's happening right now with the NBA. Major League Baseball is happening right now. You got props there. You've got futures. You got run lines, live betting, all that and more is over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Don't miss out. Head on over to FanDuel.com to claim your $250 in bonus bets today. That's all at FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more. The next topic I want to discuss on a Thursday Locked On Vols is a topic we discussed several times over the offseason. It's one we're going to discuss leading up to kickoff in the fall. A lot of new viewers, a lot of new listeners and all that, so we'll reset it, and opinions and lists can change throughout the offseason, but it's the fact that Nico Iamaliava gets no respect. I'm not sitting here saying he's Peyton Manning. I'm not sitting here saying he's Joe Montana, Tom Brady, or whatever. I'm not sitting here saying that his redshirt freshman campaign, his first year as a starting quarterback, was by and large fantastic and all-pro worthy, all-SEC worthy. I mean, it wasn't that. Like, he had some struggles. I mean, that's fair. He was inconsistent at times. He has another level that he's going to get to, and I'm confident in that. But so I'm not, hear me out here. I'm not trying to say that he was robbed of any award last year or anything. But when I look at his makeup, his pedigree, what he's already accomplished, how much room he still has left to grow in the system and the scheme and all that, and typically just kind of looking at young quarterbacks, they usually get better the more they play, right? It just baffles me that Nico's getting no love in terms of, top 10 quarterback list or quarterbacks in the SEC and all that. And again, we've done some of those, but a fresh batch has kind of started circulating this week. And what got me on this conversation was Bud Elliott. He's a co-host of Cover 3 podcast. He put out his top 10 returning quarterbacks, his top 10 list of returning quarterbacks. And I haven't heard the episode, but it's my understanding that the round table went around consisting of Bud Elliott, Chip Patterson, Tom Fornelli, Danny Cannell, and they all kind of gave their top 10 returning quarterbacks for the 2025 season. It's also, I was also told again that a lot of it's kind of going off, it can be make it your own, but some of them kind of did, pro potential and all that. But even in that regard, Nico's got a whole lot of pro potential. But regardless, Nico, of those four members of the Cover 3 podcast, Nico's name only appeared on one of their lists. It was Chip Patterson. He came in at number 7. Tom Fornelli was quoted on the show by saying he had to lower expectations for Nico after last year. And that one in itself is kind of head-scratching to me, because anybody that watched Tennessee football games, and, I know this team better. I know this team like the back of my hand. I'm on the beat. I cover it. I cover the ins and outs. And I have a better understanding of Tennessee football than that of the national media. I mean, that's not to say I'm better than members of the national media. It's just to say that I'm here and they're not. And that's the same. They have a better understanding of what's going on in South Carolina with Lenore Sellers, or what's going on in, Eugene, Oregon with its quarterback situation than I do, because, again, I cover Tennessee. But knowing the wide receiver issues, knowing the offensive line issues in pass pro, it's kind of hilarious to me that a guy that was a redshirt freshman starting quarterback, a first-year starting quarterback, that led their team to a college football playoff. The lack of respect, it's comical. It's hilarious. Bud Elliott's top 10. This is the one that I have. I don't have all their lists here simply because Bud Elliott posted it. Number 1 is DJ Lagway. Number 2, Garrett Nussmeier. Number 3, Drew Aller. Number 4 is Sawyer Robertson from Baylor. Okay, all right. Kate Klubnik's at number 5. Lenore Sellers, number 6. Damon Williams, number 7. Interesting. Sam Levitt is at number 8. Haynes King. Wow. That's at number 9. And then John Mateer is at number 10. There's a lot of great quarterbacks on this list. I'm not disputing that. I think DJ Lagway is a stud. You guys know my stance on DJ Lagway. I think it's weird, and I think it's a bit presumptuous to have him as the top returning quarterback in the SEC, or to have him as the number 1 quarterback in the country entering this fall, considering he played half a season and he threw 9 picks. 10 touchdowns, 9 picks. Now, I think he's going to be great. I think he's a stud. But so far, what we've seen, he's made a lot of plays. He's athletic. His legs are incredible. He energized that turnaround at Florida this year. He was in part of saving Billy Napier's job. He's good. But 10 touchdowns, 9 interceptions in limited time. You can't erase stats. So there's that. Garrett Nussmeier, I have no issue with him being up there. I think that a lot of Brett Favre comparisons there in terms of a ton of touchdowns, a ton of interceptions, but I think he's a pretty daggone good quarterback. I think Drew Aller's in a really good situation to kind of to be one of the better quarterbacks in the country. Cade Klubnik at Clemson, stats-wise, he deserves to be on every single list. He had a phenomenal junior season, a bit overrated early in his career, but the more he played, hello, Nico Iamaleava. I think he just got better and better and better. Lenore Sellers, I think, is a gamer. There's still questions about him and the aerial throw down the field, but I think a gamer and I think a guy that deserves to be on these lists. John Mateer, stats galore. Moving to the SEC, I have questions there. Haynes King, are you serious? Like, seriously, Haynes King? What? Hello name team, right? I mean, Tennessee back in the Pruitt administration here on Rocky Top, that was a name to know, but goodness gracious, as a junior in 2024 with Georgia Tech. Speaking of Georgia Tech, Brent Hutz broke the news yesterday that Tennessee and Georgia Tech going to have a home and home, so that's awesome. 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 2,114 yards passing. QBR is not bad, 78.6. That's not bad at all, but just over 2,100 yards passing, 14 touchdowns, 2 picks. I mean, hello? That does not deserve to be on this list whatsoever. Damon Williams Jr., I think, is going to be a stud, very similar to DJ Lagway in terms of young, the future, athletic ability, highly rated, recruit. Kind of took over, DJ Lagway took over because of injury to Graham Mertz, and Williams Jr. took over for Will Rogers simply because they just needed some fresh life, I guess is what I'm trying to say, a new direction. 944 yards passing, 8 touchdowns, 1 interception, 84.3 is the QBR. That's fine, but he didn't play an awful lot. He only had, 82 completions on the season? I mean, he didn't play an awful lot, but a bit too high on this list starting out. I think he's going to be good, but a bit too high on this list. Sawyer Robertson from Baylor, which again on Bud Elliott's list, coming in at number 4. I mean, what are we doing here? I mean, he threw for a lot of yards. I get all that, but 3,071 yards, 28 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 82.9 QBR. That is all fine and dandy. I'm not saying those stats aren't good, but again, let's remind everybody: did they start playing defense in the Big 12 yet? Sure, it's improved at points in times. I mean, BYU was a good defensive team, 19.6 points per game. Utah, 20.7 points per game. Arizona State, that was a playoff team, 22.6 points per game given up. But let's count them, guys. 1, 2, 3, 4 teams from the Big 12 last year allowed more than 30 points per game on average. Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, West Virginia, Arizona, all averaged over 30 points per game. You want to compare that to the likes of the SEC? Let's do it. Only one team in 16 gave up or allowed more than 30 points in a game, and that was Mississippi State. The 15th ranked defense in terms of points per game allowed in the SEC last year was Arkansas at 25. So you went from 25 all the way down to 34. So Mississippi State really was an outlier. So when you want to compare defenses from the SEC to the Big 12 and quarterbacks, which great stats, I think he's a good player, but great stats like Sawyer Robertson, I mean, you got to take into account the defenses that he's playing up against week in and week out. The same with some of these other quarterbacks like Sam Levitt. You are losing a really, really good tailback, okay? What are you going to be? Coming off a year where you threw for almost 2,900 yards, solid, 24 touchdowns, 6 picks, solid, 80 QBR, really good, okay? All those are better than Nico, okay? But you are losing like Nico, you are losing a really good running back. How are you going to respond? How are you going to be better? I mentioned John Mateer earlier, over 3,100 yards, 29 tutties, 7 interceptions, a 70.9 QBR, which is not fantastic. Nico's is a little bit better than that. But coming to the SEC, all I'm saying is when you look at this list, these guys, and you go up and down, I mean, DJ Lagway, did you lead your team to a playoff? No. Garrett Nussmeier? No. Drew Aller? Yes. Robinson, no. Klubnik, no. Was close. Sellers, no. Or Klubnik, yes. Klubnik did. Excuse me. Klubnik did. So, yes. Sellers was close. No. Williams, no. Levitt, yes. King, no. Mateer, no. I'm not saying it's end-all, be-all college football playoff, but, I mean, at some point, we've got to give some respect to Nico, who threw for over 2,600 yards a season ago, 19 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He ran for, do I have it in front of me? Let's see. He ran for a couple of touchdowns as well. Again, I think that we all, like, conversation on the SEC squad show. I don't know if I'm going to be on it this week. I try to make it every couple of weeks, but underrated quarterbacks in the SEC. The correct answer is Nico Iamaliava. Why? Because everybody had this elevated view of him that you just assume because he was the $8 million man, supposedly, allegedly, a number 1 ranked player in On3, 5-star quarterback. You heard his name so much before he's actually the starting quarterback at Tennessee. You just assume, oh, he's a bust. Oh, he's so overrated. No, he is the most underrated quarterback in the SEC, and it's not even close. It is not even close. So I don't know. Again, I'm not saying he's Joe Montana, okay? He's got another gear to kick it in, for sure. I mean, that is evident. But the lack of respect for a guy like Nico Iamaliava, where you're just propping up other guys who have accomplished far less, team-wise and individual-wise, it's just it's mind-boggling to me. Again, Cover 3 podcast, they put it out there, consisting of 4 guys, only one panelist, Chip Patterson, put Nico on his list. He had Nico at number 7. Tom Fornelli said that he had to lower expectations for Nico after this past year. On 3, Andy Staples. I think Andy Staples is awesome. Love being a coworker of his in the On 3 family. He put out a top 10 list. Nico is where I thought I bookmarked that. Apologies, guys. It's on my phone. He put out a list as well, and Nico was not on that list either. That list was DJ Lagway at number 1 again. Lenore Sellers number 2. That's a bit elevated. Kate Clubb at number 3. Arch Manning, what on Bud Elliott's top 10, but Arch Manning coming in here at number 4 for Andy Staples, and Arch hadn't played a whole lot of football. Garrett Nussmeier's played a lot of football. He's at 5. John Mateer's at 6. Drew Allers at 7. Sam Levitt is at 8. The new Duke quarterback, Darian Mensah, is at number 9, and Carson Beck, boy, how the mighty have fallen. Carson Beck coming in there at number 10. No Nico there at all. I'm not trying to say that Nico deserves to be on these top 10 lists, but he is absolutely the most underrated quarterback in the SEC right now, and it's not even close. Grant Ramey going to join us here to tell us what's going on with Tennessee basketball in the transfer portal, all that and more happening right now on a Thursday, Locked On Vols. Hey, I want to welcome on to the show Grant Ramey, Volquest.com, my colleague over there, and to kind of break down and react, I guess, to the start of transfer portal season for Tennessee basketball. Really good start so far. Jacoby Gillespie and Jaylen Carey. What do you like about these two and kind of the first 2 building blocks on a couple more that's going to happen for Tennessee basketball as Rick Barnes constructs this new season's roster for next winter?
Jacoby Gillespie, love that addition. Makes sense on so many different levels. Kevin Willard leaves Maryland for Villanova. Jacoby Gillespie had transferred from Belmont. He's a Greenville kid, East Tennessee kid, and starred at Maryland in his 1 year there. So for him to have this opportunity to come here, Tennessee needs somebody to replace Zakai Ziegler, obviously. Huge shoes to fill. It's going to be really tough to do, but you look at the numbers, you look at what he did at Maryland, his 1 year there, it looks like he can play at a really high level. Is a huge position of need. It looks like you got a huge addition out of the transfer portal there. Jaylen Carey was a little bit more surprising. Jacoby Gillespie seemed a little bit more like you could connect the dots based on what was happening at Maryland, what was happening at Tennessee. Jaylen Carey was a little bit more surprising because I just didn't expect them to go that route initially. I thought they might go more of a stretch 4, and they could still add a stretch 4 to this class. But he's more of a power forward, actually 6'8", 245, move guys around, knows how to score it. I'm not surprised Tennessee coaches were impressed with him because he had, I think, 18-7-3 in Knoxville before he fouled out, and he had 14-10 in Nashville when Vanderbilt beat Tennessee. So he played really well in his 2 games against Tennessee. I think he has really high upside. And I think Tennessee's kind of trying to add forwards to throw as many bigs at people as they can, because you've seen that, obviously, with Florida have success with that, with a bunch of bigs that they rotated through, and maybe Tennessee's trying to replicate that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, on Carey, it's not like he averaged 20 points a game, but he had several games where he scored in he had a lot of games where he scored in double figures.
Right.
He had a couple of games where he scored over 20. He had a whole lot of success against Tennessee. Does a move like this, I mean, I'm not saying he's Grant Williams down there, but I mean, it creates a little bit more floor balance. I mean, it gives Tennessee an actual scoring threat on a consistent basis, it feels like, from the low post.
Right, and he is 6'8". He's a little bit undersized as a forward, like Grant was. I think you're going the Jaylen Carey route based on what you've seen from him in a pretty small sample set. I mean, he's only a sophomore. He's got 2 years left, if I'm not mistaken. You need guys like that. Rick Barnes wants to play inside out. He likes to start possessions by getting it down in the paint and then kind of going from there. And you want to have somebody that you can throw it down there to and trust that they're going to be able to kind of go a little bit back to the basket and get and know what to do with it when you get the ball down there. I mean, back to the basket's a little bit outdated. It's not really the way a lot of teams play these days, but Rick still likes to play inside out like that a little bit. And that's a guy that it feels like he's just kind of scratching the surface. And Rick likes taking those guys where it feels like they've flashed a little bit and they can do so much more. I mean, Grant Williams was he was probably going to the Ivy League before Tennessee got in the picture. I mean, Rick has a history of, and I'm not saying Jaylen is Grant Williams by any stretch of the imagination, but he's had history of getting a guy like Zakai Ziegler who nobody really knew about, but you thought this guy was talented, so you're going to bring him in, you're going to develop him. I think it's a guy that's flashed and has tons of upside for them.
Let's stay in the portal here. A name that's kind of popular right now. I'm not saying that anything's about to happen, but a name that Tennessee fans are learning an awful lot about is actually a former teammate of Jacoby Gillespie at Maryland and Rodney Rice. Rice is scheduled to visit Tennessee later this week, I believe. And correct me if I'm wrong, he's going to go see Villanova before. How real do you think the chances are of a Rodney Rice joining his former teammate in Jacoby Gillespie in Knoxville?
I think Tennessee has the advantage. I agree. I don't know that anything's done. I don't know how far down the road it is, but I think Rodney wants to play with Jacoby. I think Jacoby wants to play with Rodney. Tennessee has a huge position of need where Rodney is that off-ball guard. You look at Rodney's numbers, what he did as a sophomore at Maryland. He averaged like 14.8 or something like that in Big Ten play. Him and Jacoby were one of the best backcourts in the Big Ten. I believe they were roommates at Maryland. So there's an established relationship there. Like you got that working with you. Jacoby's going to be here on that visit with Rodney Rice this weekend at Tennessee. I believe he's going to Villanova for the visit first. That's where Kevin Willard went, the former Maryland coach. He left for Villanova. Villanova's probably a little bit more desperate for bodies and probably willing to throw a little bit more money at him. But I don't know that money's going to be the be-all, end-all in this recruitment because I think it's more of a you have Jacoby on your side, other teams don't. I think that gives Tennessee the advantage.
Let's go to the prep level. A guy that Tennessee's been involved with from the get-go, okay? It's not like Tennessee's not been in it, but it does feel like Tennessee's trailed, the Dukes, the Louisvilles, the Arkansas, and maybe that's still the case, but it feels like it's very much more real now than it's ever been. Tell me where Tennessee stands with Nate Ament and any thoughts on his timeline potentially and kind of where Tennessee is in this, because it does feel like Tennessee's all in on trying to land this guy.
Yeah, Tennessee is. They are all in. It feels like they've been in it for a while, and they had him on campus in January. They've had for an official visit. They've had him on campuses for unofficial visits in the past. So they've been at it for a while, but it felt like it cooled for a while, and then it felt like the ship had just sailed and it wasn't going to happen. It feels like to me Louisville's fading a little bit. I think Duke is still the biggest threat. I don't know where Arkansas falls in all this mess, but it feels like over the last few weeks that Tennessee had faded kind of out of the picture itself. But for whatever reason, Barnes and his staff feels like they've circled back and kind of pushed all in on Nate Ament. I think Rick really likes his game and wants to add him to this roster because of that game. I think it could also be a thing where you're looking at the portal and you're trying to figure out what are my best options here in the portal. And if you think Nate Ament's the best option, like you'd rather put X amount of money into Nate Ament instead of trying to spread it out in the portal, maybe they're going that route. But all in for sure on him in that recruitment. Timing wise, I don't think anybody really knows. He's playing in some kind of event this weekend, if I'm not mistaken. And then I think it's kind of like maybe get through that event and then kind of pick back up and see where things are from there, maybe sooner rather than later. But I think it's all a guessing game at this point. But Tennessee's in it. Conversations are happening. There's dialogue. So I think both parties are interested. But when you're battling Duke for a top 5 kid consensus, that's really tough. But Tennessee is putting up a fight. They're doing whatever they can to try to get the kid.
All right, so out the door, kind of lay down the positions of need for Tennessee after the 2 additions And again, like you said, you get, a 5-star from the prep rank that could affect, what you do in the transfer portal. But tell me the positions of need still and how many slots there are available for Tennessee to utilize.
The exact number, I'm not exactly sure. I think you're bringing back 4 scholarship guys. You've signed 2 guys, and you've got another commitment. You signed Amari Evans, Dwayne Brown. You've got a commitment from Troy Henderson. That's 2 guards and a big. You're bringing back 3 forwards, and then Bishop Boswell alongside Cade Phillips, JP Estrella, and Felix Akpara, obviously.
I think there's 4 slots essentially, but they might not.
Right, and the question is, do you go from 13 to 15, and how quickly does all that stuff move? And even the number itself is a moving target. But the needs obviously are a 2-guard. Rodney Rice would fill that need if he ended up at Tennessee. I think a wing, Nate Ament, would fill that role if he ended up at Tennessee. I would still go after a stretch forward. The kid from Robert Morris, his name escapes me. He's from Spain. I would still go after one of those types that can play the 3 or the 4. Because you obviously already added Jaylen Carey, more of a power forward, but I think you could still kind of fill a stretch forward role, because Igor Milicic is gone, and he did a lot of that kind of the stretch role for them. So shooting guard, biggest one right now, and then obviously the Nate Ament, obviously a huge recruitment too. They're going to be a big-time priority there and a focus there. But you need a shooting guard, you need a wing, and I think you need another stretch 4.
Grant Ramey, Volquest.com. What are you doing now that, I guess you're covering the portal, but once portal season's over, that's like your vacation time, right?
No, I was actually thinking about dusting off my old baseball skills that I picked up in college about a million years ago, back in the Todd Raleigh era when it was friends and family only.
Well, for a guy that's going to be missing that time and you're going to be covering for him, I thank you for that. Grant Ramey, appreciate it as always, man. Thanks so much.
See you, buddy.
All right, that is Grant Ramey on the latest with Tennessee basketball in the transfer portal. A whole lot of fun seeing this roster kind of being assembled, and I think Rick Barnes really, really enjoys this part of the job, whereas some of his peers, don't, and, went ahead and, retired. I don't want to say early, but went ahead and called it quits. But I think Rick Barnes really, really enjoys this part of the job right now. I do. All right, that is going to do it here for this edition of Locked On Vols. Can't thank you enough for being here, making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single morning. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell the Tennessee fan in your life about this show. Love seeing you every day is out in public, so I appreciate that. As always, we'll come back on a Friday, Locked On Vols. We'll not really preview, kind of talk about what we want to see in the orange and white game. That's coming up all on a Friday, Locked On Vols. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Thursday, everybody.